Good morning and welcome to Coffee Time for yet another week. So, what is Coffee Time? Coffee Time is my time to have a conversation with you about whatever may happen during the week, whatever's on my mind or whatever's on your mind. This is actually our chance to interact. The rest of the time I just do videos and you watch the videos, but here you get to interact. You can ask me questions. Some of you viewers actually talk to each other and connected outside of these videos, and that's fine. If you want to build a little community around traveling in Ecuador, Colombia, or living here, then it's probably a good idea. What happened this week? Not a lot happened this week, but we're having a little heat wave. It got up to about 86 yesterday. And a person I've met who's been down here, and he's actually moving here, he sent me a teasing message saying, "You lied to me. You said it doesn't get hot down there. And my app says it's 91 degrees. Well, first of all, where I am in the northern part of Armenia, there's always a breeze, so I never feel hot. But the temperature does get up there, and it's a couple times a year for not too long. It'll get up into the high 80s. Now, his app 91, it's actually it's bogus. You just can't count on what you see on the internet. But yesterday we had the high for the week so far, and it was 86 degrees. According to actual thermometers here. I don't know where they get the internet stuff. I think they just kind of, I don't know, throw the dice. I don't know. But 86 can be pretty warm. But when you have a breeze and you get a fair amount of cloud cover, it's not bad. But I will say that when it gets warm here, the 86 is, can be warm. That's a period of time at most from about 1 to about 4. If you look at the temperatures, well, you can't really look at temperatures, but I'll tell you that prior to that, we're running in the 70s, and then it's in the 70s after, and then in the evening it's down into the mid to low 60s. So it's not even for that long a period of time. You're not trying to sleep and it's just too hot to sleep. It's not like that at all. But warm is okay. The trade-off is for most of the year, it's just a kind of a refreshing temperature. And this time of year, we're past the rainy season and we haven't had much rain. I get the sense it might rain today. I kind of hope it does. But we're in the drier, warmer portion. It doesn't last very long. So the only thing I can say about it is enjoy it while it's here. I want to thank all the contributors, people that contribute on Patreon or GoFundMe or through Google Pay. I don't thank you enough, and I just want to thank you. I'm putting together 2 trips this month. Yep, this month, 2 trips out of Quindío and two other cities. And it's the contributors that make that happen. Let's see, what else? Okay, we'll get to some topics. I don't have a lot today, so be prepared with whatever questions or topics you have. I just ask you, as always, please proceed it with 4 question marks so that I can find it and I can read it. It's difficult for me on this YouTube to pick them out and read them. But I ran into something I thought was kind of interesting. In December, there's an annual poll, and in December, the information came out recently, and it's done by the U.S. Tour Operators Association. So their information comes from basically the volume of business that comes their way. The number one area for tourists for that U.S. association is Colombia. It is the most popular in 2019. So, well, okay, I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, it's good for Colombia. It's good to bring tourist dollars. Every place likes tourist dollars. Disney loves tourist dollars. So that part of it's positive. But I found an aspect of this kind of interesting. So in this one article, it kind of went a little deeper information. It wasn't just a Colombia headline. And it had a list of questions. What were the top questions that were brought to these tour operators? And the number one question, is it safe now? And the response was, it's very safe, but it depends on where. And if you watched my video last week, it was almost a mirror of that. I was looking at this 2 days ago, and otherwise I probably would have brought this up last week because it fit what I was talking about. But they're telling them it's very safe, but it depends on where, what towns, villages, what area of the country, like that. But in general, they consider it very safe. Number two question is, how many tourists are killed? Number three question is, why is Colombia dangerous? And number four is, what is the safest city? Now, if you live here, you can kind of look at that and see, I get it. If you don't know Colombia, and all you know is the TV show Narcos and the movie this and the TV show that, and it's all it is Colombian guerrillas and bombings and drug cartels, and if that's your only point of reference, that's how you view it. But you could say the same about the U.S. or Canada or Mexico. Well, in Mexico's case, but it's just kind of interesting from being here that you get, top four questions are about how I'm going to die if I go. And so I looked up Ecuador. I just for contrast, I wanted to see what the top questions were for there. So I'll give you the top three. It's the number one question: what's the main holiday? And the context of that is planning the trip and what's the big holiday and when will airfares be, cost prohibitive and like that. So it's a practical question, but still the number one question: what is the main holiday? Number two, what problems does it have? It doesn't say, am I going to get killed? It just says, what problems do they have? Do you have running water? And number three, the number three most pressing questions for Ecuador was, when is Carnival? And this in a country that's no safer than Colombia. It just, if you're on this side of the fence, you just look at this and go, oh my goodness. People just don't get it. They just don't know. You gotta watch. Anyway, now I was posed a question about, well, if I go to Colombia and everything seems okay right now, and the economy is growing and it's safe and stable, what do you see in the future? How do you view it? And first of all, I'm going to tell you, I have no crystal ball, and I do read a lot. I do try to put some things together. I when I think about these things, and of course I do, I try to have a rational basis for what opinion I come up with, but I'm still just guessing. Educated guess, maybe, but still it's a guess. But the economy in Colombia from 2016 to 2018 had a pretty strong dip. Prior to that, it was growing, big dip. Last year came back pretty well. Whoops. I see continued improved economy. That's my guess. And I have some reasons for that. I'll cover that in a bit. I suspect that we're going to see an increased amount of protests. Now, Colombia will always have its protests. It's like having a it's like having a Christmas party. I mean, it's a social event. They wouldn't know what to do if they didn't have a protest every once in a while. You know, I think they sit around and go, you know, we haven't protested in a month or two. You know, what's wrong with us? Are we getting old? We need to get out there and, you know, sing their songs and dance in the street. So I suspect there's going to be more. And the reason is I'm seeing just over the course of a few years, a more rapid change as these kids keep going through the university. They're being programmed. And the problem is they don't recall the history. They weren't living in their recent history, or they were too young. And they're not really listening to their parents as their parents explain to them what it was like then versus how it is now. And they're really more focused on, and this is for me talking to a lot of college students and getting a lot of stuff. It's like, where are you getting this from? You don't even know your own country. And so they have this impression that Colombia is so unfair and it's just going down and it's like at its worst point in history, and they don't have a clue, but that's what they're being told. In the world over, it's kind of what's going on. So it's going on here. So I suspect there's going to be more protests, and unfortunately, it's going to be fueled by the forgotten history. And number three, I see an attempted resurgence by the FARC. They've basically been rendered irrelevant. And towards the end of last year, we saw where an obscure former leader tried to exert himself and nothing really came of it. But I think we're going to see more of that. They're going to try to get more attention, and they're going to try to win back some power, political power, or just power in general. Their criminal activities are floundering, they're fragmented. Now, keep in mind, when we're talking about the guerrillas or the FARC or whatever, they're basically segmented to outlying areas. Where you're going to find them is on the southern border of the westernmost area where Ecuador, Colombia, and the water meet. In that area, which is very isolated, there's no cities there, there's some small towns and villages, and it's kind of like jungle area. In that part of Colombia is basically where you're going to find the FARC. In the AUC and some FARC, you're going to find them on the Venezuelan border. With all this chaos going on in Venezuela, it really opened the door, and they've actually been making some headway. They're kind of expanding, but it's all in these outlying areas. It's not like Medellin or Bogota. Now, when they do try to expand themselves, don't be surprised if you don't see a car bombing once in a while in Bogota. I mean, that's where they're going to try to make their go of it. The president and the government that Colombia has at this moment, I think will keep their thumb on them, and I don't think they're going to, I don't think they're going to let this happen. And it will be years before, even if they're successful, before they can kind of get back to where they once were. I'm completely not worried about it, but it is something. I mean, think of it as, okay, you hear this in the news a lot, but there's validity to it. MS-13, the gang out of San Salvador, the MS-13. The guys that used to be all tattooed up, and they're stopping that. They have particular areas in some major cities. New Jersey, it's like the capital of the MS-13, but they're in Texas, they're in Baltimore, they're in Chicago, they're in Los Angeles, and they numbered, I don't know what the number is now, but there were over 20,000 of these, much more than the FARC. The FARC is a few thousand, but there was over 20,000, and they were basically these little crime syndicates operating. Leadership in El Salvador. Did I say San Salvador? El Salvador. And you would never have personal contact with them if you weren't involved in going to those places, or involved in, what it was they're, selling or extorting or whatever. So um, it's almost been like a hidden problem, except as they expand, they become more noticeable, draw more attention, and now they're getting their butt kicked and thrown out by the thousands. But um, you, imagine if they went unchecked for another 5 or 10 years, they would own some of these cities. I mean, you'd have to pay a toll to go into these cities. And the FARC here is something similar. Except here they're not even so much in cities. They're really in unoccupied countryside that nobody wants to live in. And so that's kind of the situation. Now, I mentioned the economy, what I base it on. Well, in 2019, it had a growth of about 3.3%, and the year prior, as I said, 16 to 18 was kind of down. It was just over 1%, which in the scheme of things, that's actually a negative. You have to have a certain amount of growth just to be even, but you can study your economy for that. But the growth was 3.3% is pretty strong last year, and most of that came towards the end of the year. So in other words, it's been on an upward swing. Inflation is actually going down. It was running in 2019 at 3.5%. That may seem like a lot, but historically that's not bad, and it's on its way down. Exports were down last year, but the last quarter of last year, they're going back up. Now, a couple of the things that lead me to think that it's going to continue this way is, first of all, the Central Bank of Colombia, their interest rate has remained unchanged. And think of the U.S. Fed. If they see issues, if there's going to be more risk or more problems, or if they see an overheated economy, they're going to raise interest rates. And here it remains unchanged. So they're not dropping interest. They don't think it needs a boost. In other words, they want to stay on the trend that they're on. So I think it's a somewhat good indicator. And the other thing is, outside of the country is the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, which, love them or hate them, doesn't matter. There's good information that can come from them. And for example, they look at Mexico, they look at Brazil, and their predictions, they've drastically pulled back on those predictions. They see a lot of problems coming in Brazil and Mexico beyond what's been occurring, the last few years. But in Colombia, there's been no change to their predictions. They see Colombia as going in the same direction. So, and here on the ground, I don't see anything really changing. Prices are very stable. And today feels like last year. So that's what I'm basing my guess on. Now, if the economy does go backwards a little bit, the plus side is then your dollar is probably going to be worth even more. But I wouldn't wish that. I prefer that it continues the way it's going. The dollar is strong enough, and if we get this year more of what we had last year, it's really the sweet spot. You see what we got here. Take a break. I have one more little topic here, but I've got a couple questions I'll ask. If you're touring in country, how do you know if you're going to go into FARC territory? And Doc Williams said, talk to locals. Yeah, I would say that's a good way to know. Or just study up on it. I mean, it's not a secret. You don't really want to go where they are. They don't want to be where they are. They've got an area near the Amazon, but it's a very, very small, surrounded by military area. You've got the Venezuelan border. You don't want to go there anyway, whether they're, not just the FARC, but any of these groups. You don't want to go near the Venezuelan border. And in that area near Ecuador, and I don't mean Ipiales, I'm talking about west of there. Those are the areas, and those are places you have no reason to want to go there. There's nothing there. If you want to see untouched jungle, there's plenty of it right here in Quindío. I mean, it's all over the country, so there's no reason to go there. In my apartment building that I'm living in, do I hear neighbors or outside noises? Well, there's two things to that, or three or four things to that. I don't know. You count. First of all, I leave my doors and windows open year round. I've got this patio door, or this door here to this little balcony. It's open year round. My windows are open year round. Rain, snow, doesn't, well, there's no snow. Rain or shine, doesn't matter. They're open. And if there were a lot of noise, that would bother me. Now, during the day, particularly around this time of day, you get a little noise here and there. But I'm on the back side of my building, and I've shown this before. I've taken the camera. Well, we'll show it here. You'll see that, you know, pretty good sized green area. There's you know, apartments here where, you know, it's just relatively quiet. Another aspect of this is that people here are not like in the US. If you're in an apartment building in the US and let's say a man and woman get in a fight and they're screaming at each other and everybody in the building hears it, you don't have that here. I don't like to get too personal, but I had an argument with someone that I'd been seeing quite a bit. I had an argument, and she was just kind of just driving me crazy, and I stop, and she's like, shh, in the midst of this, you know, argument, she's like, shh, shh. That's and I actually, my response, I had to laugh because it's like, it doesn't matter, you know, how upset somebody is. It's like what's built into them is this, you just don't do that. You don't make noise. You don't raise your voice. It's like, as a matter of fact, if you're arguing, you want to talk quieter than you normally would talk. You know, and we're more like, you know, we'll just show it on our sleeve, you know, and it's like, stop, you know. It's like, oh, no. Well, you know, unfortunately, the argument we had ended right then and there because she was like horrified that, you know, that it might escalate to being noisy because, you know, stupid gringo here doesn't know the rules of the house. Well, I actually kind of know the rules of the house, but, you know, it's like I'm more demonstrative. And anyway, we had a laugh about it later, but the point is there's kind of a different thinking here. And so my building is like a center that goes all the way to the sky. And then you've got buildings around it, four sides. And all the way down to the first floor is where the guard station is. And I can go out and I can look over the railing and I can look down 4 floors down at the guard. So you have this center. So in other words, if there were a lot of noise in this courtyard style design, you would hear it everywhere. In other words, if somebody yelled, you would hear it everywhere. Another example is when we had that earthquake, not here, but it was up near Bogota. And the building here, it's on this earthquake style foundation. And so, you know, it takes a little and kind of magnifies it to disperse the energy. It's the design. And so you feel it, and you could be on the ground and maybe not have noticed. As a matter of fact, that's what it was like. There were people that were on the ground that didn't notice, some did, depending on where you were. But if you're in a building like this, you're gonna notice that. And this woman who apparently had lived through a big earthquake, she panicked and she was out just The entire building heard her because of this courtyard design. Well, you never hear anything. That's the only time I really ever heard anything. And that's why, they're just programmed to not do that. So is it noisy? No. Now, if you come here and, you come here as man and wife, and if you're used to, getting into fights every once in a while, like people do, you might want to remember that. You don't want to be the pariah of your building, but hope that answers your question. Little insight there. Last thing I've got is I want to talk for a little bit about the types of videos that I make, and most of the topics I come up with are fueled from questions that I get or comments that I get. And I got a lot of comments this past week, and a lot of really nice comments this past week. And the video that I did, the bits and pieces, where I take just literally bits and pieces of video clips. When I'm out walking around, I see something interesting, I take a little video clip. But very often I'm out intentionally trying to do something for a particular video. So I come back and I have all these little clips, and I choose out the ones that kind of fit the narrative of a particular video. And I'm left over with one or two or three video clips that, I think somewhat interesting. Maybe to me they're interesting, like the Parisian bakery thing. And there was a clip I must have accidentally deleted that was a follow-up on that, about the sign where it says best, except it's spelled, it looks like breast. It cracks me up. But anyway, I have these clips that are left over that didn't really fit into another video. And so I'll do a video every month or two and put together these random clips. And maybe I'll comment on them if there was anything in particular. Very often I'll be talking when I did those clips so I can remember why I did the clips. So I put it together like that. And there's some people that love that, and it's their favorite kind of video. They're by far the majority of viewers. Now, the type of videos I do, there's basically four types. There's a live, which is like this. It's like, I'm here, you're here. Feel free to ask questions. If you got questions, ask right now, or if there's a topic right now. Otherwise, I'll be ending pretty soon. So I have this live, and the point of it is so that we can have interaction. You can pose a question. If there's something that's on your mind, you can bring it up and we can talk about it. And we can talk about it somewhat as a group, like the question was asking about FARC, and then Doc Williams said, talk to the locals. I mean, we can have a conversation. So I have that. I have the live videos. The second type are the talking head videos, where you're not part of a conversation. Basically, there's a topic, and I've got something I want to say about it, and I just record it like this, but there's no feedback, and it's just a topic, like, getting a visa, maybe. And in those, sometimes, very often, I'll put little clips of something, but it's essentially me. It's a talking head. Number three, interviews, whenever I can. And I ask, why don't you do more interviews? It would be more, I want to see more interviews. I would love to do more interviews, but people are always telling me they don't want to. They're afraid of the camera. I don't know. I get turned down a lot. Justin on the third floor, if you're watching this, he's always saying, maybe sometime in the future, can interview him. The couple that was just here went home Friday. I asked him a couple times, can we do an interview? He was here for a month. He went to Manizales. He's here with his wife. And I thought, it'd be interesting to get his take on, what do you think? It was a fact-finding mission, and they wanted to see if this would be suitable for the retirement. Now, in person, we had a coffee before he left, and we talked about it, and I got his take. But I thought it'd be interesting for you to hear unfiltered, because, except for if there's something like, it's like, I'll cut that out if there's gaps. So basically, I just leave their words in context for you to watch, and I don't care. I just want the truth out of them. If you think it sucks, tell me it sucks. So Interviews are the third type, and I don't do more because it's problematic. Now the live I've been doing for the past year. The talking head I've done from the start, so about 4 years. Those were my first type. Interviews about 2.5 years. Probably only about 20 interviews. And the fourth type are the walk around, the location videos, like when I went to Ibagué and I walked around different neighborhoods and I took clips of different things that might be of interest to try to give you a sense, if you were walking around, what it would look like. The favorite by far for the majority of people are the live videos and the talking head videos. And when I say that, because I get the vast amount of requests for those, and I get the most comments, I get the most thumbs up, I get the most viewership on those kinds of videos. The interviews, surprisingly, I never get a lot of views on those. The walk around, it's not really close. It's like if I got 100% of the live and the talking head, then 25% are the videos, and maybe 50 to 60% are the walk around videos. So there's quite a disparity as far as the feedback, the thumbs up, the viewership of those videos. So if I wanted to go for the most videos, it would basically just be live and talking head. And I prefer to have a mix, and that's why I do what I do. I think it depends on what's going on. I don't think you need to hear me talk about Ibagué. I think you need to see Ibagué. But the viewership, doesn't lie. It doesn't lie. The number of people that subscribe is much higher in general on this type of video than versus the walking around. Maybe I'll pick up 1 or 2 subscribers on a walk around type video, and maybe I'll pick up 12 on a talking head video. And so every way you can look at it, the live and talking head people find more interesting, probably because they're more factual, they're more informative generally. So I got a number of 2 or 3. So those an actual numbers, 2 or 3 on that last bits and pieces video. Please do more of these. I love these. Please do more. Well, I don't have enough bits and pieces to do them very often. I do them when I have enough to put together a video, which is 8 to 10 minutes, 12 minutes, somewhere in that range. So it's problematic just from that standpoint. But while I appreciate that I have a dedicated minority that loves that, the majority of people are looking for something else. I will continue, just for information because the question was asked, I will continue to do a mix of these. I prefer it. I like doing it that way. And I think it's the best overall way to present an accurate image. I can sit and talk about it, but it's also nice to actually see it and show it. And I've got a couple cities coming up. One will be a surprise. One I've already told you, Pereira. I will be going there, and I'm planning about 2 videos, show you some highlights of the place, some commercial areas, and a couple neighborhoods, to live in maybe. So I don't want to, but I'm going to. And then I've got a surprise city that I will be going to and doing 1, possibly 2 videos. It depends. So that's it. That's all I got for today. Any other questions? Let's see. What is the advantage to using World Remit, and how does it work? Okay. My advice, now, people can do whatever they want to do, and I'm not saying, whatever they do is wrong, but I'm saying that over the course of 4 years, I've come to some definite conclusions about finances, how to do your money, and how to transfer money. And nothing will change it because I've learned the hard way. I've had local banks in Ecuador and saw how problematic it was. I saw how fee crazy they are. In Colombia, uh, they love to have their fees. It's just, I don't want to spend 1 minute of my life dealing with bureaucracy, be it from a government or be it from a bank. Plus, if you bank in a Colombian or Ecuador bank, your money is going to be deposited into that bank, and now there is a track record of whatever finances. And you might be fine today, but if in a couple of years they pass some laws that make some things taxable, you're kind of caught in a box. And the way I do it is I keep an American bank, I keep an address. My half brother, uh, I use his address as my legal address, and so everything, I don't really get any mail. Everything's via email these days, but um, that's my legal address. And with the bank, used to be I would have to tell them every 3 months that, hey, I'm traveling, or they would stop the debit card, and that's how I operate, is with the debit card. But they've changed. I use Capital One 360 account, and I researched it before I came. Schwab is very similar. Capital One 360, those, best I can tell, those are the absolute two best. And I strongly suggest you keep them in the United States. Things are stable there. Um, and the Capital One 360 has no fees. It has no ATM fees. There's no extra cost to it. I don't have to maintain it. As a matter of fact, if I ever was able to keep a real amount of money in that, it's essentially a checking account, but they pay interest. So there's certainly no fees, and there's interest. So, I mean, you can't beat it. So when I need money, I just go to an ATM and withdraw it. And here in Colombia, in Ecuador, Austro Bank, all the blue lettering, Austro, there was no ATM fee. And some of the other, like Pichincha, did have a fee, which was like $4 or $5. And you can say, well, if I have it, they refund. That can be sometimes problematic, because sometimes it'll come up beyond. It'll be submitted not as an ATM fee, but as a service fee, in which case you probably won't get reimbursed. But the thing is, if you just choose wisely, you don't have to worry about those things. Why complicate it? Thank you. Appreciate contribution. Appreciate it very much. Um, so I have no interest, and I have no fees. It's free to use. And so I just take my ATM card and I withdraw whatever I need. I can withdraw. There's a minimum that you can withdraw, but you can do it again and again and again. I've only ever done it as much as 3 times. So what was the question? It was about World Remit. Well, here's the thing. If you operate this way, what happens if you lose your debit card? Well, you send for another one. But it could take a few days, a week, 10 days. I mean, depends. And so what do you do in the meantime? You might need some money. So I have a World Remit account, and it's tied to my bank. And so from my bank in the United States, I can have, they say wired, I can have transferred to either a bank here, like Bank of Colombia, because there's no fees to that. There, World Remit there is, but with the bank, there's no fees. You just walk up to the counter with your passport or your cedula or whatever legal identification is, and the transaction number, and they just give you the money. There you go. And they give it to you at whatever the current rate is. And I did lose my ATM card actually a couple times. One time I got it back, found it. The other time I didn't. The one I lost and never got back was in Ecuador, when I lost my passport, my cedula. It was a nightmare. So I went to World Remit, and I was able to come up with copies of my passport and cedula, and got the money that way, color copies. So World Remit is a great backup. And if there's somebody that wants to send you something, let's say, hey, I'm your cousin and I want to send you $100 for Christmas. You know, how can I get it to you? Have them send it World Remit. Now, I mentioned there is a fee, and it depends. Small amounts, $500. As I recall, is like $1.99, but they run specials sometimes like 99 cents. And I think the most I've ever dealt with is like $2.99, but it probably has more. If you go up to $3,000 or $4,000, you know, I'm guessing the fee is going to be maybe $7 or something. But it's relatively inexpensive, and it's virtually instant. So it's an app you put on your phone, World Remit. You put all your information, bank and stuff like that, and you just send it to yourself. You just want to be very careful that whatever is on your identification is the way you put the name. I mean, if your name is first, middle, and last, and you're using Passport, then on World Remit, use first, middle, and last. Because if you use first and last, and it comes to you, but your identification has they won't accept it. You're going to have to reverse the transaction, redo it, send another one, and it's just kind of problematic. And it also, you know, depends. I mean, maybe you sent everything you had, in that transaction, and now you've got to wait 3 days. Well, you kind of work it out, but just make sure your information is good and accurate. Otherwise, I put it on I could stand outside the bank and I could put it on the phone and transfer it and walk in the bank store and it's there. So that's the advantage of World Remit in my world. I've only needed to use it a lot more in Ecuador. I had to use it 4 or 5 times there. I've used it one time, maybe twice here in Colombia. But I've got everything kind of dialed in, so it's really smooth and works out great. So that's that. Freebird, thank you again. Wow, Canadians, all this Canadian money. World Remit works great from Canada to my daughter in New Jersey. Convenient. First 3 transactions free. After that, much cheaper than Western Union. Western Union, in my opinion, and my advice, is you want to forget Western Union exists. They are the biggest scam, the biggest ripoff. For example, people will come here and they've got dollars and they think, I'll exchange it at Western Union. Yes, they will exchange the money. But first of all, you're going to go in there and you have to provide a ton of proof of who you are. I went in with a passport and it wasn't enough. It was crazy. And it's going to depend on what office, but I had problems. So then you have to fill out paperwork. They track this money, and I don't know. Other people don't have to do it. You can go to a guy in downtown Catorce on the walking street, just walk up and exchange. But the rate's going to be bad. But you go to Western Union and the exchange rate is absolutely horrible. So you have all this bureaucracy and you've got this ridiculous exchange rate. It's just a total ripoff. Do not do it. Just leave your money in the U.S. bank and use your ATM card. It'll withdraw in Colombian pesos. And if you use the right bank, Colpatria is my favorite, because I get the exact amount. Davi Vienda is very good. The others, lesser so. But when you arrive at the airport, there will be an airport fee on the ATM. So draw a minimum amount that you need for the taxi just to get by for where you're going to get to where there'll be an ATM. So you pull out a minimum amount. You're going to get kind of raped on that. But then when you get to where you're going, you go to the ATM, and yes, the ATMs come up on Google, so you can actually put in Colpatria ATM in whatever city you're in, and it'll show you where they're located. You can just show it to the taxi, or however it is. You go there and you withdraw it. You have no fees, and you're going to get the correct rate. And then you can pull out, I need money for the week or whatever. But because it's so simple and easy, you don't have to carry a ton of money around. I never recommend doing that, but you don't even have to pull it out, take it back, and hide it in your hotel safe or whatever. Just pull it out as you need it. Once a month, I go down and I pull out the equivalent of about $800. I pay my rent, I pay all my bills, I bring some money back and I put it in my house. That's my operating money for a period of time. And then whatever is left, I leave in there as a cushion, as a backup. I'm living on, somewhere between $1,000 and $1,200 a month, and doing pretty well. Everything's kind of stabilized. It was really tough when I went through that time and I was below $800. I'll tell you, you do not want to try to live here on that. It's a tough way to go. Going to Armenia Thursday. Well, give a holler when you're here. We'll meet up, have a coffee or something. Robert, some of you saw I did 3 videos with Robert in it. Somebody was teasing me, and Robert, we're going to meet after this video. Somebody was teasing about, well, this is the Robert show, because he was in 3 consecutive videos. But he's been coming down quite a bit, and we've gotten to know each other, and we've gotten to be friends. He actually brought down an Amazon Fire Stick, because I've got one that's acting up. And Fire Stick, Amazon will not, I don't know why, but I can't get an Amazon Fire Stick directly here. I could get a Roku, and it's actually quite cheap, and there's no tax on it. I get free shipping. So it's cheaper than if I bought the Fire Stick in the United States for the equivalent. So if you like Roku, I like Fire Stick. I've had it for going on 10 years when it first came out. And so I just got a backup, because I think I've got one that's about ready to die. And so, he bought it for me. He brought it down, so I'm going to pick it up today. So there's always a way to do things. In Canada, the Scotiabank Passport Visa charges no currency conversion fee on any currency in the world. Okay. Any more questions? Are we done for the day? Is that it? What time is it? Doing pretty good on time. The contributions, I greatly appreciate it. I thank you for that. Do you need a Colombian bank account to receive money from World Remit? No. No, you just walk into the bank with your ID. And you can choose a couple ways. One way is you can choose to go to one of the money transfer places, like Facile is one of them. There are places like Western Union, but they're South American. And Entrada, I don't know. I don't use them. One of them's green. The other one's kind of a rainbow look, or Colombian colors look. But they're actual transfer places. Some of them you can go and pay your gas bill. You have those little financial things. They're like Western Unions. And then, or you can choose to send it to Bank of Colombia, or there's like 5 banks maybe that you can choose to send it to. And so just choose whatever bank is closest to you that's on the list, and you just go to one of those banks. So if I choose Bank of Colombia, I could pick it up here, I could pick it up downtown, I could pick it up the other side of town. Like, it doesn't matter. I'll go in, they all have the information on the computer. Have I used Ria Envia? Yes, I stopped using it. I used it for quite a while. Prior to moving to Ecuador, for a number of reasons, I used Ria, but it changed, and it just, they actually stopped transactions for a while, which led me to find something else. But Ria has a lot of restrictions that World Remit doesn't have. World Remit is cheap, it's easy, and so I would never go back to Ria. Ria was the big one, but it had some issues, and I moved away from it. Okay, can you hear that? That's the Pentecost Church that's across the street. And sometimes they get a little carried away on Sundays around noon, and which is, we're almost at noon. Sure, I point him out and he stops. But if you hear that yelling in the background, it's the Pentecost church. And prior to him getting all worked up and hollering, and around 12 is when they stop. But from about 10 to 11, you'll hear singing. They've got a choir and they just sing away for about an hour. And then from 11 to 12, he gets up and kind of rants and raves and waves the snakes, or what, I don't know what they do. If you're Pentecost, I apologize. I just have a bad sense of humor. I have no idea what they do. But there's one across the street, and I could find out if I wanted to walk in the door, but I don't know. They scare me. All right. So that's it for today. Again, thank you for the contributions. Thank you for the questions. I really appreciate it. If you're going to be in town, give me a holler. We'll hook up for coffee. And I guess we'll end it here. Ciao.